When an elderly man was denied his own money, a 7-foot 1-inch NBA legend stepped in. What happened next will move you. The glass doors of First Capital Bank rattled as they slammed open. Walter Thompson's trembling hands gripped his wooden cane tighter while two security guards practically dragged him toward the exit. His worn leather shoes scuffed across the polished floor. "Sir, I've already explained. No exceptions," snapped the teller. Her voice cut through the murmurs of onlookers. "Without updated digital verification, you cannot access your account." Walter's voice cracked, his pride eroding with each plea. "Please, I've been coming here for 30 years. Miss Sarah used to help me. She knew me by name." His arthritic fingers fumbled with a stack of papers, a dog-eared social security letter, a veteran's ID, utility bills. The documents slipped from his shaking hands, scattering across the floor like dry leaves. A few bystanders started to help him gather the papers, but the guards waved them away. "You're causing a disturbance, sir," the taller guard announced coldly. Walter's voice broke. "My wife's medication." His eyes welled with tears he fought to hold back. "The pharmacy closes at 5. I just need to access my pension. Please." From outside, pedestrians slowed, peering through the glass as the heartbreaking scene unfolded. Inside, the other customers shifted uncomfortably, caught between pity and indignation. A young mother shielded her child's eyes. An elderly woman muttered, "This isn't right. It's just not right." "That's enough," barked the second guard, grabbing Walter's elbow. "If you won't leave voluntarily, we'll escort you out." Walter stumbled as they shoved him out the doors. His cane clattered on the marble steps. Around him, his scattered papers told the story he no longer could. Decades of service, savings, and quiet dignity, now seemingly worthless against the cold machinery of corporate policy. His desperation was simple. His wife, Margaret, had just received a new cancer treatment. The prescription cost $486, and the pharmacy would close in less than 2 hours. Yet due to new banking policies requiring digital verification, Walter couldn't access his own money. Inside the bank, Rebecca Stevens, the new branch manager, tried to rationalize the situation. At 34, she'd been fast-tracked into management, earning her role after First Capital merged with National Financial. Her mandate was clear: enforce corporate policy without exception. Rebecca had heard Walter's pleas, seen his documents, and even pulled up his account. The screen showed decades of responsible banking, never an overdraft, never a missed deposit. But bold red warnings flagged his account. Unverified, access restricted. "Mr. Thompson," she said earlier, her tone polished but impersonal, "I understand your frustration, but the new system requires digital verification, biometric scans, smartphone app registration, two-factor authentication. Without these, we cannot authorize any transactions. It's a liability issue." Walter's voice trembled. "I don't have a smartphone. Margaret and we share a flip phone. It's always been enough, until now." Rebecca had suggested he ask a family member for help. Walter shook his head. "My son's stationed overseas. Margaret's sister isn't coming until next week. But the medication—" He placed the prescription slip on her desk. "It can't wait." Rebecca glanced at the clock. Her morning email from corporate replayed in her mind. 0 exceptions. Violations may result in immediate termination. Her job, her mortgage, her entire career felt tethered to compliance. And so she let policy outweigh compassion. Walter sat on a bench outside, his shoulders shaking as he quietly wept. His cane rested beside him, his scattered papers fluttering in the breeze. That's when a shadow fell over him, a towering 7 feet 1 inch shadow. "Sir, are you okay?" came the deep but gentle voice of Shaquille O'Neal. The former NBA star had just arrived with his teenage daughter, Miara. Walter quickly wiped his eyes, trying to collect himself. "I'm fine. Just my wife's medication." He gestured helplessly toward the bank. Miara knelt to help gather his papers. She paused on a photograph, a high school basketball team posing with their coach. "Dad, look," she said, her voice filled with recognition. "This is Coach Thompson. They were talking about him at camp." Shaq's expression shifted. He'd heard the stories earlier that day about a coach who gave everything to his community, buying uniforms for kids, mentoring students, never turning anyone away. Walter explained his situation, the digital requirements, his inability to meet them, and the looming pharmacy deadline. Shaq's face darkened. "Coach Thompson," he said, extending a hand, "let's go back in there. Some people need to be reminded that policies don't outweigh people." The three of them walked back into the bank, drawing every eye in the lobby. Phones came out, and whispers spread like wildfire. Rebecca Stevens froze mid-step as Shaq entered, his commanding presence impossible to ignore. "Miss Stevens," Shaq said, his tone steady but firm, "we need to talk about what banking means to a community." Rebecca attempted to explain corporate policy, but Shaq cut her off. "I know those regulations inside and out. I sit on the board of multiple banks. What I see here isn't security. It's a system that forgot the people it's supposed to serve." He gestured toward Walter. "This man has banked here for over 40 years. His history speaks for itself. Yet you treat him like a criminal because he doesn't own a smartphone?" Rebecca's resolve faltered. Outside, dozens of phones recorded every word. The bank's reputation hung in the balance. Shaq leaned closer. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to help Coach Thompson access his money today. And tomorrow, you'll rethink every policy that puts technology above humanity. Because if you don't, I'll personally help him move every dollar to a bank that remembers what community means." By 4:53 p.m., Walter had his withdrawal. Shaq even handed him extra cash, calling it an investment in the Skyhook legacy. As they left the bank, Miara watched her father and Walter share a firm handshake. She realized that sometimes the biggest assists aren't made on the court, they're made by standing up for what's right.